Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm just gonna film a really kind of random video that I literally just thought of, which I don't normally do. I tend to plan them out, but I was looking at my shelves and realized that a ton of my TBR shelf is sequels. So I'm just gonna do a video of all the sequels that I own physically that I still need to read. I don't know if that's interesting. I've definitely seen people do stuff similar to this, so maybe it is, but we're just gonna jump right into them. You can kind of see them right there. So the first one's not really a sequel, but it kind of is. It's a screenplay, and that is the Crimes of Grindelwald screenplay. The movie was not my favorite. I had a good time watching it. I don't hate it as much as everybody else seems to. I think it had some really good moments, but it also just was not a very cohesive storyline in my opinion, and I'm hoping reading the screenplay will help with that a little bit, especially with names, because there was a lot of name dropping in that movie and I only saw it once. So as someone who's an avid Harry Potter fan, some of the name dropping I was just lost during, so that's not a good sign for someone who knows a ton about Harry Potter, so I can't imagine people who don't. But yeah, I definitely still need to read this. Mainly the reason I haven't read it yet is because I want to annotate it like I did with the first screenplay, and I have not been in an annotating mood yet. Next up is Lois Lane Triple Threat. This is the third and I believe final book in the Lois Lane trilogy. I read the other two a long time ago, probably 2 years ago, maybe a little less than that for the second one. The first one being Lois Lane Fallout, the second one being Double Down, this being Triple Threat. I really remember loving this series. I really like the romance because it's very much a slow burn and it's kind of like a mystery. These are about Lois Lane, as in Lois Lane from Superman. I don't know barely anything about Superman, so I can't speak to these being super accurate to the comics or in their character development or anything, but I don't think they're supposed to be. But I like that Superman's identity is kind of a secret in this, and it makes the romance cuter, and there's a virtual reality video game aspect to this that I really like. And it just has some really fun mysteries, and I really just need to finish this. But I'm kind of afraid that I won't like it as much as I liked the first two because it's been so long since I read those, and that's happened with several series. So we'll find out when I do finally read it. Next up is Strike by Delilah S. Dawson. This is the second book to Hit, which I don't think got that big on BookTube when it came out a couple years ago. I don't even know if there's a sequel to this. I don't know if it's supposed to only be a duology. I just did not keep up with the series, but this was, fun fact, the first book that I ever pre-ordered. And yet, here it is, 2 years after its release date, not read, which I had a bad habit of doing, which I have not been doing lately, but this is one of those ones that's just sat here for a while because I'm afraid of not liking the sequel as much because it's been so long since I read the first one, which is going to be an ongoing theme in this video. Next up is one I'm gonna buddy read, and that is The Boy on the Bridge by M.R. Carey. This is, I think it's actually technically a prequel to The Girl with All the Gifts, which was one of my favorite books of last year, of 2018. Me and Kate are gonna buddy read this, and she's really busy with school, so it's probably gonna be a while before we actually get to it. But so that's the reason I haven't read this yet, because we plan to buddy read it. But I'm very excited to read this, and I hope it's not awful, because Girl with All the Gifts is probably one of my favorite books of all time. Definitely my favorite zombie book that I've come across. Next up is actually two sequels, and that is the second and third books to, what's the first one called? Stormdancer by J. Kristoff. The second one being Kingslayer, which is huge, and that's why I haven't read it. Also, the first book kind of confused me with some of the characters. I got them mixed up, which is not something that normally happens to me, so I was kind of thrown off by that. And these are slower paced, or at least the first one was, than his other books. And then the last one being Endsinger. Oh, it's called the Lotus War Trilogy. That's what it's called. But yeah, I meant to read these before the end of last year, and then I read nothing at the end of last year, so this didn't happen. But I definitely do want to finish this trilogy because J. Kristoff, if you don't know, is one of my favorite authors, and I love all of his other books that I've read. And I believe this is his first trilogy, so it's older, and he was still getting into his flow of his writing style at that time, and you can kind of tell. I do definitely want to finish these. Then we have Wind Witch by Susan Dennard. Okay, here's the deal with this one. This one I'm not sure if I'm actually gonna read, because I did like Truth Witch back when I read it, but that was when I was way less picky with fantasy, especially YA fantasy. And that book at the beginning was very confusing, and I remember that even then. And I think even if I reread it now, it would still be very confusing. Because there's so many types of witches in this world. And I remember really liking Isolde, I think her name is, which is like the secondary main character. It's about these two main characters, Safi and Isolde, and their like friendship. And I really remember liking the Thread Witch aspect of Isolde's character. And honestly, I'm not sure that I remember enough from the first one to continue with this, but I might just read like a recap online of Truth Witch and then try to go into this and decide from there if I want to continue with the series. That's probably what's gonna happen with this one. But I do own this second one, so I'll keep you updated on if I actually end up reading it. Next up is Tower Lord by Anthony Ryan. This is the second book, second giant hardcover book that's bigger than my face, to Bloodsong, which I read at the end of last year, and I really, really liked it. It just, as I've mentioned several times, fell during my K-pop obsession, so it kind of suffered for it because I wasn't in a reading mood when I was reading it. And then this book is enormous, and I have quite frankly not been in the mood, at least not this first month of the year, for high fantasy, or at least not like super long high fantasy. So I've been putting this one off a little bit, but I'm probably gonna try and not put it off for that much longer before I forget stuff from the first book, especially since I struggled reading it in the first place, even though I really did enjoy it. But yeah, I do own this. It's enormous. This is probably one of the most intimidating books on my physical TBR right now, besides like Sanderson's books. And while we're thinking about it, I didn't even put these on this list, but they definitely belong here because they're so intimidating, and that is Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. I lied. This is the most intimidating book on my TBR. It just makes me want to cry looking at it. Like, I definitely still need to read these two eventually. Maybe when the fourth one gets announced, we'll do that. These are so heavy. And then last, and definitely not least, and probably the one I'm the most mad at myself for not having read yet, and that is The Fate of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. If you've been around for a while, or if you were even around last year when I started rereading the series so I could catch up to this one, this is one of my favorite series of all time. Queen of the Tearling is one of my favorite books. I still haven't reread Fate of the Tearling because I want to annotate them, and like I said, I haven't been in an annotating mood, but this is the last book in the trilogy. I bought it like the second it came out, and I just didn't read it right away, which was a mistake, because now I'm afraid that this is going to suffer from me not having read those first two in a while, and I do not want that to happen, so I am rereading the series. I did reread the first one not that long ago, maybe a couple months ago, and annotated it, so I really just need to jump into Invasion of the Tearling, reread that, and then go straight into this one. And if I don't, I'm going to be so mad, because that was the whole point of this exercise, because I love this series. I've heard mixed things about the ending, so that's probably another reason why I put it off, but I definitely still need to read it, because I love this series. So these are all the sequels on my shelves that I still need to read. This is too many, but thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.